It's time to bring the thunder and love. Here I am back at it again with another Marvel review, as is the case that basically my channel has basically become a Marvel channel. Anyway, here's my review for Thor Love and Thunder. Well, as usual, I could say it's pretty good. That's what I thought of the movie. It's pretty good. It's like Multiverse of Madness where like the flaws are noticeable, but I still had a good time. Okay, so what's the story? Thor is on a quest to find inner peace after the events of Endgame and everything else that he's been through. But then when a mysterious new villain by the name of Gore the God Butcher comes around, Thor must go out and defeat him alongside with his old allies and the new one, Jane Foster, with the powers of Thor and now wielding a fixed Mjolnir. As usual, I'll start with positives. The characters. As is the case, especially when using characters that have been used multiple times, they're very charming, enjoyable, complex, and human. And as the case, it's the same here as well. The characters are pretty great. Thor he continues his story, even though he does feel more like Ragnarok Thor than like Endgame or Infinity War Thor. Here he is, continuing to do more of the same. Well, continuing his arc, it's not exactly the same. But as usual, Chris Hemsworth gives a charismatic performance. Tessa Thompson is pretty charming as Valkyrie because, to be honest, with her first appearance in Ragnarok, I thought she was okay, but then I grew to appreciate her. And then there's Korg, and then Jane Foster Thor, once again played by Natalie Portman after a years-long absence, now counting her appearance in What If. Finally back, which I'll get to her more later. Another good thing I can say for the moment is, man, it looks pretty nice. With the colors and the vibrancy, just like Ragnarok, it feels like a splendid comic book. It looks like a splendid comic book, which I can appreciate them going all out on the visual flair instead of like trying to make it more grounded because this isn't that kind of movie. And I know some will prefer something like more variety, but it looks very nice, especially the second to last action sequence being done almost entirely in black and white, but it still looks visually stunning. Another which I can praise is the action is pretty good. Not the best, but it's pretty good. And that's one advantage I'll say it has over Ragnarok. It has better action, especially there's a couple that are really creative and fun. So yeah, that's one advantage it has over the other. It's also incredibly lighthearted. That'll depend on the person's taste, but now having some time to process it, it was pretty nice to have another lighthearted Marvel adventure that isn't as high stakes as some people were hoping for. It is still pretty high stakes, but if people want something more drab and dour and serious, this ain't it. But for what it doesn't try to be anything else. Thanks to Taika Waititi's flair, I'm glad that it stuck to its lane instead of trying to do something that wasn't meant to be. Also, did anyone notice that Daryl from the Team Thor shorts made a cameo? Anyway, another thing which I can say is the other advantage this has over Ragnarok is that it has more heart and soul, as in the emotional moments land stronger, especially the ending, because boy does this end on a high note. And I appreciate them giving the time to make us empathize with the emotion and the drama that it does have, to make this overall pretty satisfying and makes it all feel worth it. Since this isn't a game-changing movie, this review probably won't be too long, but then I'll get to the negatives. First off, the visual effects are pretty hit and miss, because I did say like is very bright and colorful, with some parts having great visual effects, but then other parts will be incredibly noticeable. And if you've seen him, you know what I'm talking about. Because even CGI characters like Rocket Raccoon and Groot look pretty weird, but at least Korg looks consistent from beginning to end. And of course, there's a lot of issues with the pandemic and other issues. So that's what I'll say. The visual effects are kind of hit and miss. This movie is pretty funny. I say it's like too funny, because if I were in charge, of course this is a scenario, imaginary scenario, I would remove a few jokes, because not that they're bad, but it's just pointless. And I would remove like a few jokes to like make it flow better, because I feel like some jokes and humorous bits weren't needed. Another I can say is the story is very simplistic, like kind of basic, to be honest. Like I personally, I do wish it was more complex, because it's very simplistic. There's not much. There is good stuff in it, great stuff in fact, but it's a bit too straight to the point, I guess. I don't want to drag sections out, but it's not a super complex movie. It's very simplistic. I guess in fact anyone can enjoy it unless they're not into that. But if you don't like, if you want to take a break from super complex superhero plots, I think this could be a nice refresher, because it's simplistic, I guess, for better and for worse. Another issue that Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness had, which applies here as well, is it's too short. Like, I felt it needed another 20 to 30 minutes in order to flow better, because about me saying it was like too simplistic, this is a part of it, because it really does go from scene to scene to scene with barely any downtime, and I wish it had more downtime, because if it were longer, it would have felt pretty nice, and it would have flowed better. I feel like there could have been, it could have been longer without having filler, because I feel like the way to do this is that the smaller scale movies like Ant-Man and Spider-Man Homecoming are fine being short, but then these grander stories like Doctor Strange and this, it needs to be longer than 2 hours and 10 minutes, because I feel like I might have concerns anytime a grand Marvel movie is just 2 hours long. Like, it just needs to be longer, I think, seriously. I just hope that Black Panther Wakanda Forever and future movies solve this issue, because it needs the right length. Like, not too short, not too long. They could find the right length. It just needs, like, I guess, better writing, even though it is pretty fun. And the last isn't really a problem, but just something I wish I had more of. Christian Bale as Thor the God Butcher is great. And he could have been even greater, because in the first half he's like only has 3 scenes, including that great opening scene, and he does play a bigger part in the second half. But I do wish there could have been even more of him, because like he's so memorable and he steals the show. But I feel like if he had more screen time, he could have been like a top 3 Marvel villain for me, because the potential is there. Like, it's like, feel like with Doctor Strange, there's potential, but they don't go for it. And I don't want to think about it too hard, because why would I? I know I'm a Marvel fan and I like cinema and filmmaking, but like, I don't want to be that kind of guy. Well, a guy, you know what I'm saying, whatever. I feel like if this movie solved all these issues, like have it be 20 minutes longer, remove a few jokes, and have more gore, this could have really been a contender for a top-tier MCU movie for me. But for what it is fun. Because it's not the kind of movie that surpassed my expectations, it just met my expectations. I'll talk a little more about expectations and rankings later on, but that's what I'll leave in a moment. I'll leave a few seconds before I get to the spoiler segment. Okay, here we go. Yes! Brett Goldstein from Ted Lasso is Hercules! I know this movie doesn't have that many cameos, and I'm going to talk about the post-credits, But man, I love Ted Lasso and I love Roy Kent. So I'm just so happy to see him here because ever since he won that Emmy last year, I was like, man, he definitely. I really hope he appears in more movies and shows. And here he is. Now he's going to be a recurring character in the MCU, which I'm so happy for. The other post-credit scene, it's a big spoiler, but I'll say it quickly. I'll go more detail later. Jane Foster dies in a beautiful way because, like, to be honest, like for the first two Thor movies, I thought she was okay. I did enjoy her more in What If, and it seems like they pulled a Bo Peep because not only did they not only did they bring her back, they made her a bigger character, figuratively and literally, and they gave her a beautiful and the most perfect ending that they possibly could have ever given to her. Like I said, I don't want to make this too long, but man, that's a miracle. A character which I wasn't that big on, a character I wasn't that too fascinated by, but only to improve and get a perfect send-off. And yeah, like the very end is showing her getting to Valhalla as is them two having multiple afterlives, and then the cameo from Heimdall. Well, speaking of cameos, Lady Sif was barely in this, which is a shame. You guys could see more of her. But at least I know she's alive, so they can probably bring her back again. Hope maybe it doesn't have to be a Thor movie. It could be maybe like another space movie like Nova or whatever. Even though they gave her the perfect ending, I wouldn't mind them bringing her back as long as they don't give her anything too crazy to do, and as long as she stays in Valhalla. Because I feel like bringing her back to life will kind of cheapen her perfect ending. And speaking of endings, yeah, this does end on a high note with Gore wishing for his daughter instead of wishing for the death of gods. And I have, maybe for some it might have been too weird, but my theory is that since the Necrosword was destroyed, he's no longer corrupted and it can probably make some sense. And it's just a theory of mine. But speaking of which, it's a bit odd at the beginning, like when that other god insulted him for like praying too hard, that he just straight up tells him what the Necrosword does. Like right when it's next to him, it's like, wow, you didn't think he was gonna kill you, huh? And speaking of which, at the end, it was pretty hilarious to see Thor give those kids powers, but I feel like he could have easily stopped Gore if he just went straight for Stormbreaker, the axe, instead of giving that pep talk to those children. Like he could have easily done it, and before Gore would do anything. But it was just kind of weird. Like he could have easily gone there instead of like just talking to the kids. But whatever. I guess I need a hilarious action sequence. Yeah, I was saying Gore. He's pretty great. The makeup on the performance on him is great. I know he might not come back because it is when you hire these major actors to play villains, but I was happy to what he got. Well, I appreciate what we got, even though there could have been more of him. And for a character called Gore the God Butcher, he probably doesn't do that much God butchering, which is odd. Also, it's kind of funny that Thor has two gay friends now with Valkyrie and Korg. Speaking of Korg, I'm not sure if it's a continuity error or not, because like in Ragnarok, he said he had a single mother who had a boyfriend, but then here he says he has two gay fathers. So I wonder if they're going to clarify that or not. But it was interesting to see him fall in love with another rock man. And Valkyrie, again, like, not sure they gave an idea that she was queer in Ragnarok, but I guess they showed more of her, and it was pretty nice. That just to have a normalized gay character, and people aren't get upset at for the moment from what I've heard, I think. I'm glad that they're making a more unique side character that's openly lesbian or bisexual, I think. And everyone treated normally, which I'm glad for. I actually would like to see more of Valkyrie. Like again, with how interconnected this franchise is, some characters don't only need to appear in one franchise. Like have characters like Sif appear in the Nova series, have Valkyrie appear like in a Guardians of the Galaxy movie, etc. Like just have them cross over more. Yeah, I think I already said what I have to say about Jane. Like I love what they did with her. She's more interesting. She's more charming. She's more funny. She's more entertaining. She's just a better character overall, and I was just so happy that they made her as great as she is now, especially since I wasn't too fond of her. Speaking of which, something that was so surprised me is having two cameos from like Darcy and Dr. Selvig, because man, I've been, especially Selvig, I was like, where has he been this whole time? Like, he hasn't been around since Age of Ultron, and since like he's a very smart scientific character, like I imagine they use him more. So I'm glad to have him here, even if he just appear on the screen. And yeah, the Darcy cameo was a surprise. Happy to see her after WandaVision. I don't really mind Darcy. Okay, ranking. Just like with Doctor Multiverse of Madness, I know, comparing that to his first movie, this movie has things that are better than Ragnarok, but then other things which are worse. So I could say Ragnarok is the more, I guess, complete feeling movie and it's better paced. I say Love and Thunder is like more touching, and I feel has a better story, even though the execution of that story is kind of lacking. Like again, like saying like it's too fast paced. So I'll say Ragnarok 1, Love and Thunder 2, Thor 1, 3, and Dark World 4. Because I did like the first movie. I gotta watch it again to see if I still enjoy it as much as before. I thought the Dark World was just okay, and it's one of my least favorite movies in the series. The future of the MCU. Seems like the post-credits scenes set up a Thor 5. And if Chris Hemsworth wants to play as the character as long as he wants to, then go ahead. He still has infinite potential for what they could do with him. Maybe he can like last much longer than anyone would have imagined. Yeah, I can't wait for this. Like, there's more potential as always. A nice story. That foreshadows more. I'm not sure if I guess I would have wanted Taika Waititi to make the next one, because I guess he's really what these movies now hinge on. I think he's a very consistent director, and I have enjoyed pretty much everything he's been doing in the last few years. I did think Ragnarok was his weakest project, even I did enjoy it, so I guess by default, this makes it his weakest project now that I've seen. Because there's no way this was going to be his first misfire, because like, even though maybe some people might not like it, I think it's good, but there's no way that this was going to be the end of him. Like, he's still going to do more, like Star Wars movie and whatever else he decides to do. I hope he continues to make more as long as he doesn't like rush himself. I do feel like he needs to really limit the project, just so like he could have more time to rest, because he deserves it. Like, come on. Yeah. Oh yeah. I know it's very popular to hate on the MCU now, even though I say it's pretty consistent. It's been the same quality as Phases 1 and 2. But the thing is, like, with how far this franchise has gone, and to be honest, like, I wasn't even super hyped for Love and Thunder. I had more hype for Multiverse of Madness. But I feel like it's totally okay for me to have intense hype for a project, because like I've been enjoying this franchise so much that I think just a project existing is enough for me to watch it, even if I'm not like super like highly anticipating it. So yeah, it doesn't. I've kept all my expectations for every single project since Black Widow at a set level. If it surpasses my expectations, like Shang-Chi, Loki, or Spider-Man No Way Home, then I'm happy for that. If it just meets my expectations, I'm totally okay with that. There'll be rarely a time where like it goes under my expectations, like Hawkeye. But I still enjoyed Hawkeye, but it is my least favorite Phase 4 project personally. So I guess that's it. Like it met my expectations, didn't surpass it, but I think that's good enough. I know people don't want to see it that way, but how far this franchise has gone, I think it does deserve to be seen at a decent expectations. Anyway, I give this one, even though it's more critical but still have fun with it, an 82 out of 100. See you all on the next one. And they better continue to bring the thunder and love. Peace out. Sorry for this tacked on segment, but I have a couple points which I forgot to add in, and I decided to add them now while I still have the time. The first is now that I have said my thoughts on Love and Thunder, it is a kind of unfortunate to say that I didn't love a single Thor movie considering their potential, especially the comic potential, because ever since The Dark World, I was hoping, and like I said, I still mostly enjoy these movies aside from The Dark World, but I do wish that Marvel, and not to sound too ranty, I wish they would make that grand, epic Thor film that feels like an experience from those comics, like some comics. Like this could have been like their Lord of the Rings in space with the cast of the first two movies. Like they could bring in Jane and her friends. Like they could use all those characters and make a grand, sweeping epic. Like it doesn't have to be super serious. That's like the Marvel charm and the charm of the cast, but I feel they could have done it. But it is what it is, because like it's a shame that they kind of like blame the darker tone of the first two movies on why I had to change it, even though the problem was the writing, not the tone. Because I feel like those first two movies had better writing, people wouldn't be complaining about it. But here we are. But speaking of comics, one thing that I forgot to say that I can appreciate is that they combined two comic arcs, being the Jane Foster Mighty Thor arc and the Gore the God Butcher arc, and combined them pretty seamlessly. Like sure, just bits and pieces, and it is just a 2-hour movie, but I appreciate that they got to combine two arcs and make it cohesive alongside with the continuing Thor's arc from his previous entries. So yeah, I can give kudos to that. Thank you, Marvel.